Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Treasury of Constantinople. This week we'll talk about a late Byzantine denomination, the Trachy. As usual, first some background. Trachy is a broad term used to refer to cup-shaped coins in circulation from the time of Alexius I in the 11th century until the middle of the 14th century. It's important to note that not all cup-shaped Byzantine coins are Trachy coins. The earliest cup-shaped or concave coin was the gold histamenon. To make a long story short, the solidus, also called nomisma, was traditionally a 24-carat 4.55-gram coin. Nikephoros II in the 960s introduced a new gold denomination, the tetarteron, which, despite its name, which means 1/4, it was only 2 carats, so 1/12 of the gold content of the solidus. The nomisma started being called histamenon soon after this. These two coins, the histamenon, previously called solidus or nomisma, and the new tetarteron, were essentially indistinguishable, except that the latter had less gold in it than the former, and was only slightly lighter. Aside from that, the size and design was identical, and officially they seem to have had the same value. Over the next few decades, the tetarteron became progressively thicker and smaller, while the histamenon became thinner and wider. During the reign of Constantine VIII, they started having different designs. By the time of Michael IV, the histamenon was being minted in a slightly concave shape for reasons unknown. Other coins were occasionally minted in a slight concave shape too, like, for example, some of the silver milliarethyon coins from Michael VII and Nicephorus III. Then, in 1092, Alexius I made a fundamental reform of the imperial coinage. We'll talk about that in the next video, but for now, note that many of the newly introduced denominations were cup-shaped. That includes the topic of this video, the trachy. The plural of trachy in Greek is trachea, but we'll go with trachies to make it simple. So now, we have a more clear definition of what a trachy is. It's a cup-shaped coin introduced by Alexius I in his 1092 coinage reform. The shape, however, is not particularly unique, as it was following a trend set by previous emperors. Alexius introduced two types of trachy, an electrum asprin trachy and a billon asprin trachy. Electrum is an alloy of gold and silver, with trace amounts of copper, while billon is an alloy of silver and copper, with trace amounts of other base metals. Aspron comes from the Latin asper and means rough. In the context of coins, over time it got the meaning of freshly minted, and in the context of silver coins it meant white. That's presumably why these trachy coins were called asper trachy, since both the electrum and billon ones, in the time of Alexius's anyway, had a whitish color. The original electrum aspron trachy had 6 carats and was worth 1/3 of the gold hyperpyron. It didn't last long, though, as it was debased out of existence in the following century. The billon aspron trachy was worth 1/48 of a hyperpyron and was around 8 to 10% silver in the beginning. Originally it had a beautiful white color. Over time, though, as the silver content decreased, the coins got a silver wash which wore off easily. Electrum asprin trachies usually measure between 27 and 34 millimeters and weigh around 4 grams. Billon asprin trachies 24 to 30 millimeters and weigh 2 to 3 grams. During the reign of Alexius, there were 2 mints in operation, Constantinople and Thessalonica, both minted trachies. The mint of Thessalonica would eventually close sometime in the 12th century. If we say that a trachy has the shape of a cup, then the outside of the cup is the obverse and the inside is the reverse. Just like any other coin, the design on the obverse and reverse is different. Because of the shape, though, the obverse is often more worn, and so it's harder to see it. Note that the different obverse and reverse types aren't actually very different, and the legends are usually extremely hard, if not impossible, to read. This makes identifying them considerably harder in comparison to earlier Byzantine bronze coins. Trachy coins were minted for a period of 3 centuries, and there are over 100 seer numbers for the different types. Going over all of them would put everyone to sleep. Instead, let's just look at some common trends in the design. The most common obverses show Christ sitting, the Virgin Mary sitting, holding the baby Jesus, or the bust of Christ. The reverses usually show the bust of the emperor standing, the emperor being crowned, or the emperor and someone else with a cross in between. On the reverses where the emperor is being crowned, the one doing the crowning is either Christ, the Virgin Mary, or a saint. The most commonly portrayed saints are Saint George, Saint Theodore, Saint Demetrius, and Saint Constantine. On the reverses, where there are two figures, one is the emperor and the other can be either the Virgin Mary, a saint, the emperor's wife, or the Archangel Michael. Note that while many different types of trachies were minted, most of them are very hard to find nowadays. The most affordable trachies are those from Alexius I, his son John II, and grandson Manuel I, as well as those of Isaac II. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that these coins were minted until the middle of the 14th century. However, in 1202 the Fourth Crusade happened, and 2 years later, after a crushing defeat, the Crusaders were still on the hook to pay the Venetians for the boats that took them to the Holy Land. Since fighting against their enemies hadn't worked, the Crusaders went the tried and proved method of fighting against their allies, and captured and sacked Constantinople. 2/3 of the city went up in flames, and over 75% of the population fled. The only left were those too poor or too weak to flee. The Crusaders decided to stay in the city they had just destroyed, despite being unwelcome, and then prolonged their stay for another 60 years. This period is called the Latin Empire of Constantinople. The elite of Constantinople retreated south and established their temporary capital in Nicaea, where they hung out for the aforementioned 60 years before returning in glory to Constantinople. Thus, this period is called by modern historians the Empire of Nicaea. Some relatives of previous emperors scattered, settling in Greece, the Balkans, and the Black Sea, and forming the Empire of Trebizond, the Despotate of Epirus, and the Kingdom of Thessalonica, each claiming the title of Byzantine Emperor. All of these states that emerged from the aftermath of the Fourth Crusade minted trachies. Let's have a look at them and the story behind them. The Empire of Nicaea was not only the true successor of the Byzantine Empire, it was the Byzantine Empire, minus its capital. Being a very short 90 kilometers south of Constantinople, that's where most of 3/4 of the population of the capital fled to. Among them was Theodore Lascaris, husband of Anna Comnena Angelina, who was the daughter of Emperor Alexius III, the guy who was in charge when the Crusaders knocked on the doors of Constantinople, April 1204. In any case, our Theodore was a noble, a blood relation of the imperial Comneno family through his mother, and the son-in-law of a Byzantine emperor, so the Byzantines rallied around him. After the Patriarch of Constantinople died in Greece, our Theodore named a new patriarch, and the patriarch proceeded to crown Theodore emperor, and all was well in the world. A new mint was established in Nicaea in 1208, then moved to Magnesia 6 years later. These mints kept minting the same coins they had in Constantinople. Relevant to us is the electrum and billon trachies, as well as bronze trachies, which had been a thing for a while at this point. They also started minting silver trachies, which was new. After the Crusaders took over Constantinople, they kept minting coins in the same denominations the Byzantines had, mostly bronze trachies, and with a very similar style too. One type that is a bit unique is this one with the Archangel Michael on the reverse. You can see the wings and everything, it's quite distinctive. These coins are usually 27 to 30 millimeters and weigh 3 to 4 grams. For some reason, many of the trachies from the Latin rulers have this peculiar shape, as if their edges had been cut. Maybe they really were cut, since these coins are considerably smaller, less than 20 millimeters and barely weighing 1 gram. The Empire of Trebizond was established by Alexius Comnenus and his brother David, grandsons of Emperor Andronicus I, who had been deposed and killed a few decades before. This state ended up lasting longer than the Byzantine Empire itself, with Trebizond falling to the Ottomans in 1461, 8 years after the fall of Constantinople. For the 200 years it existed, the emperors of Trebizond claimed to be the rightful heirs of the Byzantine Empire, while the Byzantine emperors saw Trebizond as a sort of rebellious province, definitely part of the Byzantine Empire, just not under its control. Small technicality, no need to worry. In Trebizond they minted mostly silver asper coins, as well as some bronze trachies and flats. Note that they controlled the Crimea where Cherson is. It's interesting that their coins look Byzantine, but clearly have a very unique style. They are all extremely rare. The Despotate of Epirus was founded by Michael Komnenos Doukas, a cousin of the Byzantine emperors Isaac II and Alexios III. The early rulers of Epirus considered themselves to be the rightful Byzantine emperors, just like their friends in Trebizond. The coins they minted were silver and billon trachies, very Byzantine looking. In less than a century, though, because of fighting and marriages and so on, the Despotate of Epirus first came under the influence and was then ruled by the Crusaders. They stopped minting trachies and started minting the familiar-looking denier tournois, like in the rest of Franco-Cratia. Epirus was lost to the Ottomans in 1479, almost 20 years after Trebizond. The short-lived Empire of Thessalonica was founded by Theodore Komnenos Doukas, brother of our Michael Komnenos Doukas, who we just talked about, and was therefore also a cousin of the Byzantine emperors Isaac II and Alexios III. Like the rulers of Epirus and Trebizond, the rulers of Thessalonica also considered themselves to be the rightful Byzantine emperors. They were all wrong. Before Thessalonica was captured by the Bulgarians, then retaken by Theodore, then retaken by the real Byzantine emperors, at the time chilling in Nicaea, the mint of Thessalonica was busy churning out both bronze and silver trachies, as well as bronze to Tartaron and half to Tartaron coins. Finally, we have the Bulgarians. Bulgarian culture had long been influenced by Byzantium, and this was reflected in the coinage of many Bulgarian states over the centuries. The Second Bulgarian Empire was formed in 1185 after the disintegration of Byzantine power in the Balkans due to Crusader and Mongol incursions alike. Among other denominations, they also minted trachies. Some were copies of Byzantine types, others had original designs. And that's it for this one. If we made any mistakes or missed anything important about this topic, please leave a nicely worded comment below. Have a nice morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching this video. And I hope to see you next time. Also, if you like collecting coins, or know someone who does, feel free to check out Adelaide's eBay store, The Spanish Galleon. We're also on Instagram, links in the description.